There's also a big protest at 11 a.m. Fourth of Madison.
Where?
All right.
Fourth of Madison.
On what? One Thursday.
There'll be at least 12 people there.
Yeah. Big crowd. Yeah.
Next week we have another inauguration.
Yeah. Inauguration part 3.
And so what?
Good morning, everyone. And it is a good morning. We're so excited that today the Equality Act will come to the floor. We have passed it in the House before, the Equality Act, H.R. 5, to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community. This time it will be not only passed in the House, but on a path to a signing at the White House. We're very excited about that. Later we'll be gathered, I think right here, right, to talk about that more specifically. But I want to salute Congressman David Cicilline for his leadership on this legislation and Senator Merkley, and just point out that when we announced that legislation, John Lewis stood with us as a leader in that passing the Equality Act. Again, we're waiting, as we all are, to hear from the Senate parliamentarian as to what will happen with the minimum wage piece of the legislation. I don't know what other considerations she has, but I feel that we have a very, very strong argument, and we have a very big need in our country to pass the minimum wage. We've been working on this fight for 15 for a number of years now, and it's long overdue, and it will be phased in, and we would hope that it could be part of this reconciliation bill. But could be any moment. If you hear, because I don't have a phone here, if you hear before I do, let me know, okay? And then that will be, as you know, is part of our American Rescue Plan that we are putting forth. It's about putting vaccinations in the arm, money in the pocket, children in the schools, workers in their jobs, and it's what this country needs. And I salute the president for recognizing those needs and courageously going forth, and the American people, with it like over 75% of American people support the legislation. Overwhelmingly, Democrats, Republicans, and independents support the legislation. So hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, it will be passed and then prepared to send over to the Senate by Monday morning for them to act upon it. And then if they change it, we'll take it back and pass it and then send it to the White House. We're very excited about that. And it is receiving such very widespread support from economists, and the need for something substantial is very recognized, as well as the timing and at a time when interest rates are low. So the need is great, the opportunity is there, and the precision of this legislation to directly address the needs of the American people, the lives of the American people, and the livelihood. Earlier this week, we sadly observed the over 500,000 people who died from the coronavirus. I was so pleased that we had a big turnout of Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, on the steps of the Capitol for a moment of silence and music, no speeches, music, to share our sympathy with the families of those who have lost their loved ones. Any questions?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, sir. What you got? Let's go across here like this.
The other week, prior to the Senate verdict on the impeachment trial, you were asked whether there might be something else Democrats might think about as punishment if there was not a conviction or censure. And you said you might have something to say about that. I was wondering if there's anything you guys are looking at, maybe the $200,000 plus pension that Trump gets as an ex-president, or is this a kind of closed chapter in your book?
No, I think that what I was thinking of is that we have to get what we need. He's gone. What we need is the truth, and that's what we want to find out. The truth about what is happening in our country to enable something like this to be acceptable to the Republican Party. Secondly, separate from him, the need for us to secure the Capitol in a way that gives people confidence that they can visit, their children can come and see this temple of democracy. But so many things are happening outside of the Congress in regard to your question that we right now, our focus is on finding out the truth. And I'm disappointed in what I heard the minority leader yesterday, McConnell, say on the floor of the Senate. It was really quite stunning because in my brief conversation with him on this subject, I had the impression that he wanted to have a January 6th, similar to 9/11, commission, but what he said on the floor was really a departure from that. It seemed when he spoke that he was taking a page out of the book of Senator Johnson. It was really disappointing. He said, we could do something narrow that looks at the Capitol, or we could potentially do something broader to analyze the full scope of political violence problem in this country. No, we have a domestic terrorism challenge in this country. That's what the director of the FBI testified to the end of September. Domestic violence taking more lives than international violence in this country, and the biggest number since Oklahoma City. The biggest buckets under that category of domestic violence were white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and another list of xenophobia, Islamophobia, etc. I refer you to his statement. So for the leader of the Senate to make light of this and is well, it's Don Johnson. Was his first name Don?
Ron.
What is it, Ron? Well, Senator, let me call. Not Miami Vice or anything like that, Don Johnson. Ron Johnson seems to be taking the lead on what the scope would be of how we look at protecting our country from domestic terrorism. Yes, sir.
On that topic, follow up on that topic.
Yes, right.
Minority Leader and others have
Yeah.
also said they would want to see this commission be a 50-50 bipartisan split. Why do you not want to go down that road, and are you concerned about who Republicans would appoint to
No.
be on a commission like that?
No, I was the author of the legislation for the 9/11 Commission. We passed in the committee, in the Intelligence Committee. I lost on the floor. The ball was picked up by Tim Romer, and he, with the enthusiastic support of the families of 9/11, was able to pass the bill. But it was resisted at first by our Republican colleagues. Not in the committee. I won in committee, but not on the floor of the House. They were in the majority. That was a different time, a different commission. The most recent commission of scope has been the one I take great pride in, the Centennial of Women's Suffrage. That was a committee where each of us had 2, and the president had 2. So it was 6-4. It isn't unusual to give the president, we don't talk about Democrats and Republicans. These could be independents. They could all be one. I hesitated to put in there that there should be a difference only of 1 because maybe more independents would be named. We don't know because there's a criteria for who it is. So it is. That's not the point, though. That's easily negotiated. The point is the scope. If you don't know your why, if you don't have your purpose as to what the purpose of this is, then the rest of it is not the important part of the conversation. Yes, sir.
On that, to that end, though, are you concerned, though, if the commission were to have a lack of equilibrium, that the public would have confidence in it, then, number one, and number two, to your point about scope, that Republicans would look into things such as political protest, violence last summer from the left, and then that would be their method of kind of saying, okay, we're not going to be focused just on what happened in the Capitol. We want to look into what happened.
Well, that's exactly what my Senator McConnell said.
And is that your
But we had an event on January 6th which I'm sure the world has not forgotten. At that time, there was a descent on the Capitol instigated by the President of the United States for an insurrection on the Capitol and on our democracy to overturn or to prevent the Electoral College votes to be counted and the President of the United States to be ascertained. After there was an assault on the Capitol, and those of us, and to his credit, Senator McConnell, Leader McConnell was part of it, we insisted on coming back to the Capitol to resume the proceedings, not doing it in off-site or any of that. He was very much a part of coming back to the Capitol. Even after an assault on the Capitol, they still insisted on objecting to another state to take us into 4 o'clock in the morning, and then overwhelmingly voting against the count. And so we're saying, okay, something happened here. There's it's about domestic terrorism. We want to solve this. And now will do anything to have it be bipartisan, so as your point is, that it would be well received by the American people. But if we're talking about scope and saying, well, we got to go and look at all mob, but it's the Ron Johnson School of January 6th investigation as to seeking the truth. And that's most unfortunate. You had 2 already. Yes, sir. Did you have one?
Not to steal its thunder at 2:15, but can you talk to us about why this Equality Act is needed? And secondly, about the Republicans calling it an attack on religious liberty and religious freedom and open up to lawsuits.
Thank you for the question. I love talking about the Equality Act. It is needed because there is discrimination against people in the LGBTQ community. To give you a little background on that, we had for a long time a series, 4 things that we were going to do. One was we were going to pass hate crimes legislation, which we did. And I'm so proud of that. And Matthew Shepard's parents helped us pass that legislation. Secondly, we were going to do the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which under President Obama's leadership and with his courage and the rest, we were able to do that. The next thing we were going to do is ENDA, to end discrimination in the workplace. But then it was like, well, why just the workplace? Why not in every aspect of the economy and of our society? So we went to the Equality Act so that it was more comprehensive than just in the workplace. And that's where we are now. And our 4th was not our doing, it was the courts, was marriage equality. And the courts took care of that for us. So the piece that was remaining of the 4 that we set out to do a number of years ago is now the Equality Act. Its manifestation earlier was ENDA, but we broadened it. And it is necessary because I wish it weren't. It breaks my heart that it is necessary, but the fact is, and in fact we had a sad event here even this morning demonstrating the need for us to have respect. Not even just respect, but take pride. Take pride in our LGBTQ community. Thank you for your question. Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't seem that you've made changes to the legislation or the police reform legislation since you passed it in 2019,
No.
2020.
Yeah.
You still need 60 votes in the Senate, so how do you see the path to this becoming law if Republicans won't sign on?
Well, we are passing the legislation here, which is a very balanced, and thank you for your question about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which we will have on the floor next week. Is it next week? And Congresswoman Bass, to her credit, had worked in a very, very diligent and fair way to put something together that was respectful of those in blue, who do their work so honorably and to whom we are in debt, but also to recognize that not everyone does that. And so this is what that legislation is about. What the Senate will do is what the Senate will do, but we will send over the bill that has the balance that we have in it. When we sent it over before, the Senate said, well, we're for all these things, let's study them. And it was, well, we're either going to do something or we're not going to do something, but we're not. Hundreds of thousands, well, millions of people marched in the street all over the world, not just for one day, but over and over again to say, make the change that is necessary. And this legislation, when we had the hearing for it in the House, the family came, George Floyd's family came, and they said, Madam Speaker, will you name the bill for George Floyd? And I said, I will only name the bill for George Floyd if you think it is worthy of his name. Now let's go into the process. They did, and we are honored to call it by his name.
COVID relief?
Yeah.
Last question.
On COVID relief, let's say the parliamentarian does allow the minimum
Yeah.
wage. What's your strategy to get it done? Isn't it going to be an uphill climb with Manchin, Sinema, others against it? Is there what's the path forward on minimum wage?
You know what? You're going to have to go ask that question on the Senate side. But we are very, very pleased with the case that has been made. And we will pass. We will pass a minimum wage bill. We must pass a minimum wage bill. Again, when we had the majority in 2007, one of the first bills that we passed, it was part of our 6 for 06. In the first 100 hours, we passed the minimum wage bill, $7.25. It had not been passed in 11 years. Now it's even longer. After we passed it in the House, it went over to the Senate, and about the 22nd of January, a senator from West Virginia, Senator Byrd, put out a press statement supporting the passage of the minimum wage and how important it was to the people of West Virginia. I call that to your attention because he might be an unlikely advocate, but he was out there urging the House. When we passed it in the Senate, we went out and had a big, I would say a rally, I guess, on the lawn, and I spoke for the House Democrats, and Senator Kennedy spoke for the Senate Democrats, and he said, you know what we have to do now? We have to pass the minimum wage, recognizing that already that was not enough for a family to live on. So here it is, that was 07 in January, signed by President Bush, George W. Bush, and what are we? 14 years later, we still haven't raised the minimum wage. Thank you all very much. I'll see you, some of you, 2 o'clock? 2:15 for the Equality Act. Thank you.
Thank you.